What's going on, guys? It's Killswitch again here, back for another Teacher Tuesday episode. Again, just want to say appreciate all the love for the channel. Hope you guys have been enjoying these. I still plan on doing one every Tuesday unless something comes up. So without further ado, let's get into it. So for this one, I'm gonna be doing another like brawler melee type hero, but this one can kind of cover more than just one role per se. So I'm gonna go ahead and cover steel.
Orders.
So as you guys know, steel can be ran as a support. Steel can be ran as a jungler, an off laner, even a mid laner. I mean, there's really not a whole lot Steel can't do. He seems to succeed more in certain roles, but pretty much he's always nice to have on your team. So I'll try and cover like a broad like spectrum of like roles and stuff. I may get a little more specific into one over the other, you know, just kind of depending, but I'll try and cover as much as I can for all the roles, the different kind of builds that you might see with those, etc., etc. So let's get started on his kit a little bit here. So looking at his base stats, nothing special. I know I kind of go over this every time, just to give you an idea of kind of like what you're looking at. Really doesn't tell you much, so just kind of briefly look at it. He does get a pretty good amount of physical armor and a decent amount of energy armor, like starting off baseline, so that is nice to remember that. But otherwise, I wouldn't worry too much about this. So let's start with his abilities. So his first ability we're going to cover shield charge. That's his Q. So charge forward, dealing 90, 135, 180, 225, and 270 damage in a line, and knocking back enemy units. And that is energy damage. So this ability, this is the one you see where he basically just like, you know, like kind of like rides his, not really ride the shield. And like Paragon, it was he would ride his shield, but this one he like puts his shield out and like pushes, charges forward and pushes people like either back or out of the way or whatever. And he also is like I think invincible during the charge as well. It doesn't say it on here, but I'm pretty sure he is. So that's something good to remember with that. But this is kind of like his, also kind of like his movement ability. Also like paired with his ult or whatever, you can cover a decent amount of range, but most of the time it's used for his comboing. And then I'll kind of get into that a little bit later as well once we've covered all the abilities, like what his combos kind of look like. But yeah, pretty straightforward. Just a kind of a charge forward, deals a little bit of damage and knocks enemies either back or out of the way depending on like, you know, where you hit them, where they are when you hit them, etc. So moving on to his next ability, that is his force shield. That's his deployable, like, I don't know, like little magical shield or whatever that covers pretty big area. Deploy a large barrier that blocks all incoming projectiles and slows enemies that touch it by 15, 18, 21, 24, 27% for 1.5 seconds at all levels. So if you press and hold it, it'll deploy the shield on his person. So like he'll basically just hold that barrier shield and block whatever, you know, in front of him, or you can kind of turn side to side, whatever. If you just press and release it, or if you have it on like I believe it's regular or standard cast, you can kind of pick, like you can press the button and you can deploy it wherever you want to, basically, within a certain amount of range, and it'll deploy it on the ground, and then it'll stay there for however long. It's a pretty good ability. I mean, it used to be pretty bugged. Half the time it would just, like, you would press and try and place it, and then it would just end up you would be holding it or whatever. But I mean, seems to work pretty good now. I haven't had any issues with it recently, so but yeah, it's pretty good ability. Can save you sometimes by blocking projectiles or whatever, especially if you run him in the support role. You'll probably use this more as a steal support rather than like jungle or offlane, but it is kind of nice to be able to throw it down to slow enemies that are trying to run away or whatever as well. Won't run into that too often. Maybe an offlane if you're facing a ranged offlaner, it can come in handy, but mostly you'll see that used as a steal support. Moving to his next ability, that's going to be his ultimate, his shield crash. So leap into the air towards a targeted location, slamming into the ground, dealing 180, 260, 340 at max level damage, and that is energy damage. Enemy units caught in the area are also knocked up and stunned for 1.2 seconds at all levels. So this is a really, really good ability. It's always been his bread and butter. Being able to leap forward, hit an AoE stun knock-up is pretty crazy. It deals a decent amount of damage, but most importantly, this is like probably the best initiating ability in the game, right? So if you're a steal and you're like running with your team, you're going into a team fight and your teammates know you have your ultimate up, they're going to be literally sitting there waiting for you to initiate with this ability. Because as soon as you initiate, if you jump in and you stun 3 or 4 people out of, the enemy team, that's huge, because that means your teammates get to go in, especially your damage dealers get to go in knowing that those enemies are stunned for 1.2 seconds. Burst casters, like, that's plenty of time to go in and just obliterate somebody, right? Especially if you pair this with that combo I was kind of talking about earlier. You can stun lock somebody to the point where they may not even be able to, like, actually move before they're actually dead. So, and again, I'll kind of cover like the combo or a couple of the combos, or just kind of how the best case scenario with like all of his abilities and stuff once we get through them all. But this will be 9 times out of 10, this is going to be like you're initiating, like, hey, we're going in on this team fight, ultimate ready, ping ultimate ready if you're not MVC, ping ultimate ready as steal. Your team's gonna know what that means, basically. So, alright, moving on to his auto attack here. Nothing crazy, just regular auto attack, 60 damage base at all levels. That is physical damage, pretty standard. Next ability is his right mouse button. That is his shield bash. So deal 70, 110, 150, 190, and 230 damage, and stun enemy units within melee range for 0.5, 0.55, 0.6, 0.65, 0.7 seconds. And that is energy damage as well. So this is like a kind of like a cone stun. Basically, he'll just swing his shield out in a cone in front of him, and it'll basically damage and stun anyone within that cone that's kind of in that melee range, basically. So pretty simple, pretty simple ability. This is also a really good ability. Like, this is probably like my second favorite ability of Steel's, just because it's so useful. And the cooldown, like 10 seconds at all levels base, plus like if you're building any kind of cooldown reduction, which if you're playing tank or support or both Steel, you're gonna have some cooldown reduction. Like, there's several items that you'll buy that are almost must buy items that will give you some cooldown reduction regardless of the role. And we'll get into that with the build and everything later, but really good ability, especially with the cooldown. The reason I kind of prefer this one a little bit more over the shield charge, which I still use all of them, of course, don't get me wrong, but this one the cooldown's a little bit lower. See, this one cooldown at max level is 10 as opposed to like 16, 14.5, 13 at the lower levels. So that's really the only thing. Like, I mean, that's just something you'll have to remember, is that basically this is going to be a lower cooldown than your shield charge at all times. So that'll be the one that you'll probably use more frequently. So moving on to his passive. So Force Barrier. Gain 1 stack of Force Barrier whenever Steel applies a crowd control effect from one of his abilities, up to a maximum of 5 at all levels stacks. Force Barrier stacks last for 3 seconds at all levels, with subsequent stacks refreshing the duration. And each Force Barrier stack will give you 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 at max level energy armor. And then at 4 Force Barrier stacks at all levels, you'll gain 15% at all levels endurance. So, long story short, you can stack Force Barrier up to 5 times, and that's basically anytime you do crowd control from his abilities. So his right mouse button, his ultimate, his Q, anytime you land one of those abilities, you're going to get a stack of Force Barrier, which in turn will give you, at depending on which level, 8, 10, 12, 14, it'll give you energy armor per stack, and it'll give you endurance. If you're at 4 stacks, it'll get you endurance, 15% endurance. So basically, the more you apply crowd control, you're going to gain energy armor, and if you get 4, you're going to get resistance to crowd control. So pretty solid. I mean, it seems like it can be a little confusing. I wouldn't watch this like, you know, oh, I can't go in, I don't have Force Barrier. Like, don't worry about it like that. Just know, the more you're in the fight, the more you're in there hitting abilities, the more you're stunning people, you're gonna gain these. You're gonna probably have these active most of the time for team fights and stuff. Just, you know, something to remember. But don't be like worrying too much about it as far as like when you have and when you don't. You're probably, most times when you have these stacks, you're not even gonna be noticing it because you're gonna be in the middle of a team fight. So don't get too crazy with that. Now, getting into the combos and whatnot, or like a how to initiate, or how to like start a team fight with Steel, how to perform in a team fight, or even just like a duo lane if you're playing support. So basically, as Steel support, and Steel in general, but especially with Steel support, you're going to want to play pretty safe early game. He's not as useful until you hit level 6 and get that ultimate. Once he has that ultimate, that's when, you know, that's kind of like when you come online, basically. Like, your ability to change a fight just became huge once you hit level 6, because now all of a sudden you have a ranged leap stun with your ultimate. Once you hit that, you immediately turn around, you can right mouse button, especially if they're grouped together, right? So if the enemy team, like say it's a duo lane, you're playing support, say they're sitting there right next to each other, you jump in with this steel ult, you knock them up, then you right mouse button, because right mouse button, your shield bash, you can hit them both as long as they're within melee range. You'll hit them both, so now they're stunned even longer, and then you hit them with your shield charge, knocking them back towards your team to finish off the kills. And if that still doesn't finish them off, like say you know, they're real low trying to run away, you can put this shield out in front of them to slow them down. That should secure at least one of those kills, if not both. I mean, depending on how late in the game, how ahead your ADC is, whatever, you know, all those variables, but 9 times out of 10, that's going to secure you at least one kill. So, and then if you're playing like Steel as a jungler, or as like a frontliner, offlaner, again, same thing. It might be more on a bigger scale as far as getting into a team fight, like you might have 3 or 4 people there, but just remember that Steel ultimate will hit multiple enemies, so that's why it's such a huge boon for your team, because if they know you have your ultimate and they're waiting for you, they're going to be ready. They're going to see you get ready to go in with that ultimate, and they're going to be ready to follow up with that. So, and if you're able to combo that, again, like I said, if you're able to Steel ult, hit 3 of them, and then shield bash 2 or 3 of them, and then shield charge 2 or 3 of them, like, you're immediately going to be taking out 2 or 3 enemies as long as your teammates are there to follow up. So it's huge. That's kind of like the basic, I mean, that's like the main combo. Like, there might be situations where you will have to use your shield charge to get closer to be able to get into range with his ult. There may be times when you don't necessarily need to use the ultimate. Maybe you're already within melee range. Maybe you just decide you're gonna shield bash them, stun them, and let your teammates kind of follow up with that. Maybe you need to, all you need to do is shield charge them to knock them back towards your team. I mean, whatever it may be, it's gonna be situational. But I would say that more often than not, you're gonna initiate with this, because that's such a huge, like, that's already putting you in an advantage in any fight. Starting with a knockup that lasts 1.2 seconds and dealing some damage while your teammates are able to deal damage, that's already putting you at an advantage and turning that team fight already in your favor to start. So, but yeah, that's pretty much Steel's kit. I wouldn't say the playstyle is a whole lot different between the roles that you can play him in. Just remember, support, he's not, you're not going to be super tanky early just because of the gold gain and stuff, and you're going to want to put on at least 1 or 2 supportive items and stuff. So just remember, you know, when you're playing him off lane and jungle, he's probably going to be more beefy to start. Support, not as much, so don't play too aggressively until you get to level 6. And then depending on how ahead or behind your ADC is, just play smart with it, right? If you know the duo laners are there and maybe they're already like half health or something like that, or they've been farming in lane and you and your ADC are full health, you know that even if you're a little bit behind, you can ult in, stun them, then right mouse button, stun them again, knock them back. You're going to be dealing damage. Your carry's going to be dealing damage. Like, you're probably 9 times out of 10 going to win that fight. So play smart, play safe, and don't get too aggressive. He can bully, but that doesn't mean he can't be bullied as well. So keep that in mind. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump into the build guide for Steel. And again, like I said, I'll try and cover all of the roles that he can be played in. Maybe generically more so, but it'll at least give you an idea of what items work well with him depending on which situation you're in. But we'll start by covering the aspects, and so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flip over the the Strange Matter website to show you the aspects, since I can't do it in the Learn tab yet. They haven't quite added that. What I'll do is I'll just pull this over real quick and we'll check out the aspects. So with steel, there's several aspects that you can actually work with. Being that his abilities deal energy damage, you can actually go into somewhat of a caster. You can go into like if you're trying to go off lane and you're trying to build like some damage, you could technically go into like a caster type build where you're building energy damage and whatever. You could use like Queen to stack with the minion kills for your energy power. You can use Magician because, you know, mana regeneration. He is kind of a mana intensive unit, so something to remember with that. You can technically build some red as well, because he can also be built as like a physical brawler. I wouldn't recommend any of the red. I guess maybe if you were to do one, maybe King, but I have never ran it. I don't see it as that useful. As far as support roles go, I really love Templar. You're giving any of your teammates, you know, within a certain range, your armor, your physical and energy armor. That's great, especially because steel is just inherently really tanky, and if you put any armor on him, you're basically going to be buffing your team. And then Beast Hunter, Rook, and Titan, all three of these are good options for steel. Even in like a support role, like a lot of times what I'll build is like Templar and Rook as a support, just because one, you're going to be getting health with all of your favor gain, but you're also, anytime you're CC'd or you take a certain percentage of your health, you're going to be increasing your armor for 3 seconds anytime you take 10% of your max health, which honestly, that's not that hard to do. Like, you can literally take one ability and take that much easily. So, and that can only occur once every 30 seconds, but I mean, still, that's pretty solid. And then it says gain 0. There's a formula for it, but you'll gain physical and energy armor for 4 seconds when hit by crowd control as well. And that can stack up to 10 times. So basically, and as a steel, the way a lot of people will try and deal with you is just by stun locking you or trying to keep you stunned and out of the fight, because they know what you can do. So this can be pretty big. Other than that though, Titan, Beast Hunter for like the off lane and jungle roles are good, because it's just going to give you power and health, and then out of combat movement speed. Titan, kind of the same thing, health regen, and 2% of your health is adaptive power. So I mean, that's another solid choice. I haven't really used the purple aspects a ton with him. I could see some of them being good, maybe like opportunist for like a support steal, or even like a jungler steal. Destroying enemy ward reduces your active trinket. Like, that's pretty cool. It grants true vision around the killer in an 1800 unit rate. So like, that can be useful for sure. And then opportunists, like that, you know, if you're playing jungle, you can kind of lock somebody down. If they're by themselves, you'll gain a bonus damage. You'll gain a bonus to your damage if they're by themselves. Aggressor, even 12% bonus movement speed through fog walls, as that can be big for jungle, like ganking, decaying over 4 seconds. While in enemy territory, you'll gain more physical power based on your level. So again, like, those are all possibilities. Even Rogue, honestly, I wouldn't. Rogue seems to be more of a aspect for like more assassins or like actual true brawlers that are trying to build up like their attack speed and stuff like that. But it could work, is basically what I'm saying. The main ones, though, you're going to probably be looking at are potentially these, the green aspects. Templar, you could use even these two as a support, but I think Templar is too good not to use, especially as like a tanky support. And then potentially Magician, potentially Queen, just depending on how you want to build him. I've used Magician before as a support just so I can keep getting that mana regen back, and then damaging heroes, enemy heroes, will reduce the cooldown of your ultimate by 1 second. So I mean, that's pretty good as well. So, you know, play around with them, see which works better for you, see if you have a combination you like the best. But yeah, that basically covers the aspects. So moving into like an item guide here. Obviously for the support, it's sort of set in stone what you're going to be using, at least to start the game, because Bangle is too good not to use for any support. Doesn't even matter if you're a ranged or melee support, like this is the kind of go-to right now. And that eventually will turn into Bracelet of Opulence, wherever it is. Let's see, Bracelet. Oh, so it's not actually in the items. Well, anyways, Bracelet of Opulence, I mean, it's basically a bigger version of this. Nothing too crazy to remember about it other than your passives with your executing a minion that will grant you and your ally gold. Then the bracelet basically will have buffed health and armor stats. So, but yeah, this is the go-to for supports right now. And then I see some supports still running this double small health pot. That's okay. Personally, I love going the Sentry Ward early, because I will put that Sentry Ward in our backline jungle, basically, right at the beginning of the game, because counter jungling is pretty popular right now, and it's nice to know if someone's in your side of the jungle. At minimum, it's just going to tell you, like, hey, there's a potential we get ganked here, so we need to play a little safer. Like, best case scenario is you catch somebody out there in your jungle, and you and your support and even your jungler collapse on it and kill them and get an early kill, put their jungler behind. That can be huge. So I always prefer the Sentry Ward over the small health pots, but again, there's probably situations where you would want these. Just, you know, play it to the situation. It's never a bad idea though. Sentry Ward early. Outside of that though, if I'm going steel jungle, I'll use the regular Affliction, health pot, and the Rad Pulse to start. And then off lane, you'll probably go Titan's Armor, small health pot to start. Those are all pretty standard for the roles that they're in. Boots, as far as boots go, if you're going to build boots on steel, the most helpful boots, in my opinion, are the Greaves or the Inertia Wraps. You're not going to see a huge benefit from like getting Energy Pen on steel or attack speed. You could use Boots of Haste as well for the cooldown reduction and the mana, like, and especially playing like support. But truthfully, I go back and forth on these because I'm like, yeah, these are nice, but having that physical armor early or energy armor early can make a pretty big difference, like in the duo lane, depending on who you're facing. I mean, if you're facing a Decker, Inertia Wraps could come in like huge clutch, because everyone knows Decker's stun ball does a lot of damage, and it'll give you the endurance towards the CC as well. If you're not if you're facing like a phase or something, you know, support, and then you want to be more protected against that ADC, like the Greaves are good. I mean, it just really, like, honestly, I don't think you could pick wrong here. Like, base it towards your playstyle. If you're playing more aggressive as a support, you know, run whatever, you know, run any of these. Like, honestly, like I said, I don't think you could pick wrong here. Now, for jungle and off lane, I'd probably definitely go one of these just because you're getting that bonus armor. But even in that role, I don't think Boots of Haste is a bad choice. So, I mean, pick your favorite, I guess, is what I'm saying. But after Boots, and I covered Boots first just because it's you know, everyone's gonna get Boots at some point. That's not saying that Boots is like my first card built after like my starter kit or whatever. In support, I usually go Boots first, but any of the other roles I won't. But I just wanted to cover that as a baseline. Items after Boots, or your first item depending on your role. As jungle steel, I like to get a little bit of damage early and a little bit of like not utility, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I like to go into Stimulant Gauntlet as steel jungle first, just because you're gonna get some health, you're gonna get some mana, some cooldown reduction, and some physical power, but really it's that Kill Claw passive. So, and I mean, this is a great item, like, for just about any hero who spams abilities, but with steel, like, you're already pretty inherently tanky earlier on because you have that higher base, like, physical armor, and you're gonna get some health out of this card as well. So, like, it's gonna add from that early to mid game. This is gonna be a pretty good item to have, but mainly because it's gonna increase your damage output even without having to go into a damage build. Every time you proc an ability, it's gonna give you a bonus to your next auto attack, essentially, within 10 seconds. And there's not really like a cooldown to it per se. It says cooldown 1.5 seconds, but that's just basically like 1.5 seconds after you've procced that bonus damage on your melee. You can do it again. You can proc an ability and get that bonus on your next one again. So it's really useful, especially because, you know, it's steel. You're spamming abilities quite a bit. So I love this card on steel jungle. Off lane, depending on who you're off laning against, I think Bale is a pretty good one to start with. Even Blighted or like even Thorn Shield, depending on who you're fighting. But those are all good starter items. I wouldn't build it early, but Knight's Battle Plate's a good one to have just because of the armor, both armor bonuses and the cooldown reduction. Typically, if I'm building this, I'm building it like mid to later in the game, but that's a good possibility there. So basically, when I'm building steel, there's like two ways I see to build him. You can build him like the Bruiser Brawler method, or you can build him pure tank, or even tank with just like maybe a little bit of damage built in. My Brawler variant really just consists of like the Stimulant Gauntlet, a Demon Sword, a U-Mantle, and then some utility items, whatever it may be for whatever the situation kind of calls for. I might build one of the Cleaver cards, which, I mean, it's not the greatest on steel, but it's still an option. Might build like Fist of the Titan, again, not the greatest item on steel, but either way, I mean, you're gonna get value out of it. It just really is like how much damage do you potentially want to deal, or how tanky do you want to be. Most of the time, I'd say tank steel is probably the way to go. It's the safest option, but if you're getting to the point where you're getting good with steel and you're wanting to like, hey, how can I be even more impactful in a game? Like, I feel like I do really good with the crowd control. I lock people down, but when it comes to playing from behind or whatever, like, I never have enough damage to help in these fights. maybe start throwing in some of these, you know, damage cards or whatever, like Demon Sword. Demon Sword's a great card right now. Stimulant Gauntlet. Unyielding Mantle, I love this item. I don't see it ran as much as it should be. It's pretty good for any type of brawler. Physical Power Health and the Overdrive passive, like, I mean, it's just, that's a solid item. Other than that, though, like I said, Thorn Shield, Baleful Armor for your tank builds, Blighted Chestplate, Knight's Battle Plate, even Cataphract. Cataphract's solid. You could even potentially run, where is it? There, you could run, I'm trying to find it, like your spell shields, like your Warlock's Aegis for your energy build, your energy power build. Looking for the Gunblade. I don't see it. Anyway, the spell shield that gives you physical damage and energy armor, that's always a possibility as well. If you want an extra like protection against an ability, you can go Ring of Rejuvenation for the crowd control, resistance, and energy armor. And again, that's going to give you health and cooldown reduction. You could technically you could go PS as well for the health and the health regen, stuff like that. You could do Fountain, which I don't see Fountain as useful on him, just because you don't have any healing to increase. So I mean, kind of take that with a grain of salt. I don't really run it. The energy armor and health and cooldown reduction's good, but I see other items being better used for steel. Now as far as support items go, I like going into Blessing of the Divine first. It's gonna give you both types of armor. It's gonna give you that, like, you know, team overshield proc or whatever. Like, that's pretty solid. I might even build Miracles too, just to have that healing. I know it's not the greatest item on steel, but running support, like, these are two of the staple support items. So if you're gonna run a couple, I would probably do these two. And then after you have these built, you can kind of go into like a more tanky build, like Blessings, Robe. Then you might go into like Bale or Blighted Chestplate, Thorn Shield, Ring of Rejuvenation, something like that. Just remember, when you're playing support, you're going to have other roles that are damage dealing, so you're not having to worry as much about dealing damage. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, with the energy brawler, bruiser build, whatever you want to call it, I didn't touch too much on this, but some of the items that you can run for that are like Eldritch Flame, which is going to give you energy, power, health, cooldown, and the burn on abilities. You could do Mage's Scythe and Cursed Remnant even. Like cards that are going to give you, like, kind of like cards that you would run on like Kwang would kind of apply here, because it's going to give you like health, some energy armor or whatever. Like, basically the idea with the energy bruiser build is to get as much energy damage as well as health, armors, you know, basically anything that's going to give you both of those stats, whether it be health or armor, something along those lines. Like any items that are going to give you that, like I said, Siphon, Cursed Remnant, Warlock's Aegis, Eldritch Flame, stuff like that. I don't really run an energy bruiser build too much on steel. I feel like his physical with the stem gauntlet, I feel like that's too good not to use, but try it out. I mean, if it works for you, use it. I mean, whatever's the most fun for you, whatever, you know, whatever feels the most fluid to you in game, whatever you feel like it makes the most impact. Just remember, we're playing a game here. We're having fun. This isn't, you know, not every game. You don't have to go into every game using the same exact build. You know, try something different. Have fun with it. If you see something that on paper looks good, try it out. Like, no one's gonna, like, you know, well, your team might get a little upset if you're theory crafting mid-game, but you know what? Like, when it comes down to it, team play is more important, I think, than build. Being there, using your abilities, that type of stuff is going to combat, like, skill is going to combat some of the item building in a way. So, yeah. That's kind of like my build guide for Steel, in all the roles. I know I kind of just generically covered a lot of it. I didn't really pinpoint one role over the other. But if you have more questions, or if you have more suggestions or whatever, if I missed something, you know, feel free to throw it down in the comments. I say this with all the videos. I'm not claiming to be the best Steel player. I'm not claiming to be, you know, the best player, this and that. I don't know everything. I'm just trying to bring some awareness and trying to help out some newer players or whatever it may be. So, you know, if you've got something to add, if you want to collaborate with this type of stuff, if you've got a build guide that's a little bit different on a hero and you just want to say, hey, maybe you should cover this in your next, you know, if you're going to cover this hero, throw this in there, whatever it may be, feel free, let me know, throw it down in the comments. I'm on Discord, I'm in game, send me a message, whatever it may be. I'm always open to feedback. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. Hopefully it's helpful. I hope to see you guys in game. If you guys want to add me, I usually try and play with people whenever I can. I'm also started a few Twitch streams here and there, so if you see me on there, feel free to go in and watch, check it out, get in the chat, you know, let me know what you guys are thinking, or just come hang out. So that'll do it for this one. Again, I appreciate all the support, all the likes, all the follows. We got more to come. We're going to keep doing this stuff, so stay tuned, guys. Thank you.